Attention Earthlings, do not attempt to adjust your dial.
You are about to voyage into the marvelously mystifying.
Join us as we navigate the enigmatic waters of consciousness, delve into the arcane realms of the occult and the paranormal, and converse with captivating beings from across the universe.
Prepare to expand your mind, challenge your perceptions, and journey into the unknown with your guides, Bunnicula and HP Hovercraft.
The frequencies of strangeness await.
Welcome to Dizzy Spell.
Hey.
Welcome, Earthlings.
What's up?
What's up? I'm Bunnicula.
I'm HP Hovercraft.
That's right, you are. And you're listening to the Dizzy Spell podcast.
Episode 4.
Boom.
Is it 4, correct?
Episode 4.
Great.
We have something special today.
What's up?
We have
What's
a special
the special
guest.
thing?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm the special thing.
Yes, you are. You're very special. This is Michael Eades, owner, founder, director, all around
Okay, yeah.
runner of We Own This Town.
That's true. I say curator.
Okay.
Is that weird?
No, I like it.
Curator.
I like it.
Because
No.
you guys are making the content. I'm just
Fair.
putting it out there.
Okay.
Curate.
Okay. So We Own This Town is
Podcast network of Nashville-based creators, creative minds of all kinds of different topics. I kind of think it's interesting to have people from Nashville talk about whatever, just because being here, you're going to have a very unique perspective.
Yeah.
Even if there's someone else talking about cryptids in Minneapolis,
So
they're
true.
not going to talk about it in the same way people from Nashville are
That's
talking
right.
about it.
Yep.
So it's just kind of that, like giving like a voice to people who want to make podcasts. I have this little studio that we're in right now in my office, and I just want people to make weird things.
Cool.
So I'm happy
So-
to help you all get this out in the world.
You do podcast
Uh-huh.
records.
Yeah, I have a little record label called YK Records that's been, I think we're in our 15th year.
Oh, wow.
I say we, but it's just me.
Yeah, but that's like the royal we.
Yeah.
You know?
You are royal.
Been putting out, I've got like 115 releases out there. Not all
wow.
full-length records, but stuff.
That's amazing.
YKRecords.com. Check it out. It's pretty cool.
and you've done like over 300 and
Yeah, I have a
something
podcast
episodes.
myself called We Own This Town Music. That's all like local Nashville area music, just like basically a radio show of local music.
Yeah.
And the 380th episode is just now coming out. So,
Nice.
yeah, not bad.
That's mind blowing. That's beyond not bad. That's
not
like
bad.
prolific. Wow.
Yeah, it took
Thank
a long
you.
time.
Very impressive stuff. So
Yeah.
we're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
You're always here, kind of hiding, sort of listening.
Yeah, I'm in the other room listening.
I think it probably leads to more questions and answers usually. But today you're here with us.
Yes, thank
and
you.
it's because we have a very exciting topic to talk about today.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to present it later.
Yes, that's right. So in the meantime, do we have any pop culture stuff we need to
Man,
go over?
the only thing that has been like so invading my mind is the current ongoing.
Drake and Kendrick
Yes.
Lamar feud. Of course. I should have.
And
Already know
it's like
this,
it's
yes.
like I don't think that we need to talk about it because it has like nothing to
Disagree,
do.
but no, I get it.
It has nothing to do with anything that is our like subject
Normal.
matter
Yeah.
or anything. There's no like weirdness about it.
Yeah.
But like it's literally the only thing that I can think about.
Well, I think the context that really is the through line to Dizzy
Sure. This
is back in the day when we were a radio show, the show after us was Tapeworms, which is where HP Hovercraft, I first discovered him, let's say. And his co-host was a certified Drake hater. And we would
Like-
rant from 10 p.m.
like
to 2 a.m. about how
2000
much we hate Drake.
Like this was like years and years ago.
Wow.
And it was just like an
were ahead of the curve.
ongoing bit that because we were on the radio at like midnight to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And so we would just go and we would just be like so silly. Like nobody's listening to this at all. So we'd just be like, Drake, if you have anything, if you want to fight either of us, give us a call.
Yes.
This number, like it was just an ongoing, like for no
Open
reason.
beef. Yeah.
Do you genuinely dislike Drake?
I think I do now.
Yeah. After all of this.
But like I've always like, you know, I'm like a marginal to large like hip hop fan. And so I've always just like not really liked his like whole deal. Like sure, like his like there's like he's got songs that I like, but in general, like his persona, like he has so much like stuff about like how hard he is,
Right?
And we just like all know what you were
like
on Degrassi,
fangirling courtside,
like you were,
Yeah.
Like we know what your upbringing was like,
yeah.
And so it's such a character, and so I think that is like something that I've always just like not respected about him as like a dude, like, and sure, like there's an argument to be made about like rappers being like you are a character of whatever.
Right.
Like that's
Sure.
Like it's not all real. And even like Kendrick Lamar's whole thing too is also like these aren't all my stories. Like they're not me, but they're like people that I've interacted with, and that's like his whole deal. Whatever. But just there's something about like the way that Drake presents himself that it's just always been like off-putting to me, and especially Matt Worm. Shout out Matt Worm.
Hello, we love you.
But it's just like he's just like an easy target and like funny to make fun of, and that's just like what we were
it's
doing
like you
at the
said,
time.
Everyone has personas. Kendrick has like a lot of personas, and he uses those for like storytelling. I don't buy any of it from Drake. I just I don't know. It doesn't.
So
come
by the
off like
time this
authentic.
episode is released, will the beef have quelled, or will it be so gargantuan that like my parents will know about it?
Okay, so like at this point, like as of this recording, which is May 6th,
Yes.
we are expecting a new Kendrick Lamar track tonight.
Sure.
Right.
That's what we're expecting. I would be surprised if by whatever next 2 weeks from now, if it's still going, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that the majority of it has happened.
Okay.
But it's been insane.
Yes.
Like
very interesting stuff.
Is hip hop the only genre with beef tracks?
No.
I mean, it happens in rock a little,
Definitely
Okay.
rock.
but I guess I mean call and response, because there's diss tracks in rock, but people don't write them back, do they?
the big example is Sun Kill Moon, who canceled artist, but Sun Kill Moon wrote the song about war on drugs. Do you guys know about that?
No.
I think that it's just they had like beef because Sun Kill Moon, who is Mark whatever from Red House Painters,
Right.
He was at a music festival and performing and could hear Red House Painter or War on Drugs, sorry. And was like, this is like garbage music. I hate it. And I was like, and he was mad about the bleed over. And then there was like toss back, but he wrote like multiple. I think that the song is called "The War on Drugs Suck My Dick." I'm like almost certain that that's what it's called. So that happened, and that's like a one that everybody remembers.
Yeah.
And that's like, can you think of like softer bands to be beefing?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like truly. But then like so that's when people talk about that, and then like early 2000s to late 90s, like Taking Back Sunday
I
and
was gonna
Brand New
say
is
that.
like a huge beef.
Yes.
Where like
Yes.
both of those bands have like full records about how they hate each other.
Yes.
And that's like,
And it's like over a girl partially. And
That's that.
It's just messy. And
I
goofy.
think that in hardcore, like
Oh, yeah.
especially currently, there is a lot of it, but it's not like directly to a person. It's like people talking about like, you stabbed me in the back. You were supposed to be my brother, and but that kind of stuff. Sorry about the voice.
No, I
guess.
love
That's a
it.
good voice.
And then all that shit's just like on the internet. But I also don't think that there's ever been in history like this level of, man, this is long at this point.
It has a Wikipedia
This level of
page.
like
It's
people
legit.
going like this, because like Biggie and Tupac's like the biggest like
Right.
like rap feud ever, like
Sure.
in that everybody knows about, Nas and Jay-Z. But in the digital age where you can just like upload something,
Yeah.
like it just hasn't happened because this is like the first time. So there's like, we're seeing like somebody Drake put up a track, and then like an hour later a response that's like, you didn't just like have something in the chamber.
Yeah.
You listened to it and then went into your home studio and just recorded
Yeah.
a direct response to it. And it's just insane. And I just like,
It's remarkable.
I'm just like, I'm so excited about it. It's so funny to me.
Well, I think there is also a through line here that makes it Dizzy Spellian in that part of the reason I think that Kendrick came for him so hard was because he had the audacity to bring up the Tupac AI and
that is true.
Yeah, which is like insane to me, like that you would
Tupac
ever.
and Snoop Dogg AI voices.
And Tupac's estate basically said they were going to threaten to sue. So he took the song down.
And then now what they're saying is that Kendrick pressured Tupac's estate to do that.
Wow.
Who cares? Fine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, fine. That's okay.
Yeah. Man.
Okay, yes. Anyway.
Love this
do a
thread. Love this
Yes,
thread.
I mean.
Because we could definitely keep going now about AI personas.
I agree.
And those kind of like, there's a lot there.
We will for sure. We'll get into it for sure. But anyway, so yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah,
And I do think it's going to reverberate in very interesting ways moving forward. So we'll have to see how that pans out. And maybe we'll have to get our correspondent Matt Worm in here someday to do a bonus episode.
It's like I need to like record like a whole separate like just like one episode podcast, me and Matt, not related to Dizzy Spell, just us like talking about it because it is so crazy. Like I think I could do like 3 hours if me and Matt.
I will help you record a single episode podcast.
What's it called? I'm just breaking it down. Like, if you don't know anything, I will break the whole thing down and all the references and everything.
You're good at that.
Crazy.
Also, I like the idea of like a podcast series that's just like one-offs. Like you just get people to come do a one-off. That would be like very interesting.
Sure.
Interesting ideas. I like it. Well, shall we move on to our Dizzy cues?
I guess.
Are you so sad? We can't just talk about drinking
Kendrick
Lamar.
It's fine. It's fine.
Time for direct queries.
All right. Do you want to be the picker of our direct query for today?
I don't feel like I ever get to pull him out of the bag. I feel like you always do it.
Well, last time we had a Instagram message.
No, nice. All right.
Here it is. Do you want to read it?
It's on such nice, thick cardstock.
Thanks to our producer, Michael Eades.
Okay. Two questions, it seems like. Would you transfer or upload your consciousness to a computer? And then follow-up question, what type of body robot golem would you download your mind into after?
Nice. Michael, you want to start us off?
Wow.
Do you know what a golem is?
Like,
sort of, but you should define it.
I feel like I have a different definition than maybe you're gonna.
A golem is essentially like a man made of clay that has been animated. It's like of a Jewish mythology. Yeah, there's like different versions of it, but generally he's made of clay and he's like animated with a special Jewish word that's written on his head. And
do we want to lay like some ground rules conceptually about this? So am I doing it now, or do I have some sort of like terminal illness, or is it the end of my life?
Well, you have very interesting like thoughts about cryogenic freezing and things too. So I feel like this would all kind of go together, right?
Yeah.
As part of your like end of life plans. That's just I know you, right? Right?
Got a lot of opinions about the end of my life.
That's great.
Yeah, as
I
you
mean
should.
about cryogenic freezing. That's all I meant.
As you should. Everyone should have an opinion about end
You
of
ever
life.
just like all of a sudden think about death, like a terrible moment?
Okay, Barbie.
Just like all of a sudden you're just like driving and you're like, God. It's like, and then every time that it happens to me where I start thinking about death, I just go, oh no. It's going to be that kind of day, I guess.
I don't know your thoughts on this. Are you pro or anti cryogenic freezing?
Pro.
Very pro.
Pro, but skeptical because of the, I guess, historical, like, it has not worked out so many times.
Like, there are cryogenic labs that have failed and have, like, ruined bodies.
Failed,
and
defrosted all the bodies, put them in a big mass grave.
For sure, but you wouldn't know. You know? It wouldn't bother you.
So that's what happens when I have the flash of thinking about death.
Yeah.
Is like, oh no, all of a sudden, and then that's how I calm myself is, oh, there's no afterlife. It's just over. Right? And that's how I calm myself down is, what's going to happen when it ends? Oh, nothing.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay, great.
For you. Yeah.
So, would you download your consciousness into a computer
in order to live forever?
Right. Well, presumably, if you're going to put it then into a robot or a golem, you would. I mean, let's just say a robot, because that's going to live longer. It's an interesting question. I think let's just, for the purposes of the question, let's say it's up to the point before you like lose your mind. Like, you know,
Yes.
you obviously don't want to be like 85 and having like memory loss and dementia and be like, you know what, putting this thing in a computer. Like,
No, and you just wake up and you're in a different body,
Right.
and you have no memories. Maybe actually, now that I'm saying it out loud,
you're
maybe
down.
that's all right.
You're
Yeah.
down.
You know, no memories of what's going on, and new body,
I am of the
live a new life.
I am of the thinking that I'm very curious about the future. Like, very, very curious. Like,
Totally.
what's going to happen in 100 years
Yeah.
or 200 years. Like,
Yeah.
maybe the planet is just a fiery hellscape, or, you know, maybe we figured things out. It's like a Star Trek universe.
Yes.
And we have replicators, and it's awesome. And, man, I'd love to see it either way, just to know. But I also think that having an end of life, it makes you enjoy your life.
It's
Yeah.
like part of the human experience, right?
It has to stop, which is scary and unfortunate. But so
But it's only part of the thing because it's the reality, right? Like,
true.
you know, if it wasn't, then it would be different. I really worry about the culture shock of waking up like that. Like, just having grown up with Futurama existing in my life, you know, like thinking about like that's like all of my stuff is based on watching that since I was like 6-7 years old. Waking up and just being completely unfamiliar with everything that you think that you know, like things that you can't even comprehend. Like, you have no grasp on like how society works at all.
But Fry did great. He did great. So many seasons across so many different networks. He did great.
I will say that too. It's like, I mean, not to get too deep into just a TV show, but not just a TV show, but he wasn't asking to be, you know, he wasn't mentally prepared to do that thing.
Totally.
He just
And he
got
stayed a
stuck into
delivery
it.
boy. He just did the same job. It's fine.
I love it. I'm going to go ahead and say I agree with you about the like deep curiosity in the future and what that would look like. And I think if it were something like where you're, you know, getting your little license and you check a little box that says, yes, please upload my consciousness if I'm near death.
Yeah,
you know,
right?
Something
Like donating
that.
an organ, like
I could be into that.
just to save it, right? Because that's the same like concept as
Why not?
cryonics, is that they're like, do you want it to happen? We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we might as well save you.
There is the question, though. What happens to your conscious then? Because it's like the episode of Black Mirror where it's like all the people in the Star Trek ship and they're all just like stuck in there, their consciousness. Have you seen this? Like, it's like,
But they
what
had
happens to
so
your
much
consciousness?
fun.
It's like sitting on a hard drive and gets like thrown in a dump somewhere and then you just live on a hard drive forever. You know, I don't know. Again, it gets into responsibility of the people, and you know, up high.
Beg the question, though, like with where we're headed. Like, if you downloaded your consciousness into a computer, couldn't they just throw you into a simulation and you think you're alive?
totally.
And maybe that's what we're experiencing right now.
And then,
Wait.
I mean, this is deep. Yeah, this is like one of the first Disney spells that I listened to. Is you talking about that, and or just like
That's
this
funny.
is a funny, like it's not funny, but like imagine like you live your whole life and then you die and then when you like come back to reality, you've just taken like a huge hit of DMT.
I've done that 8 times at least. I've definitely
And you're or like,
done that.
I was like, that was my whole life.
I'm pretty sure I've lived several
Or
lives.
there's like an amazing early Rick and Morty thing where it's the guy's whole life is like just literally like an arcade game.
Oh, yeah.
That he played.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Yep.
All
Really
this
good one.
reminds me of like there's a David Cross bit where he's talking about heaven and he's like mocking heaven, the idea of like hanging out in heaven and like how much time changes and how much what you're saying, culture shock, right? Like how much
like-
culture changes over time. So there's everyone's in heaven
There
from
was
different
so many
time
racists.
periods.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's
dude.
that.
Yeah, no way.
There's that. And then there's also like your idea of heaven's like, oh, I get to do all my favorite things forever. I love playing Xbox. So you're just sitting on the couch playing Xbox. And Cross's joke is like a chimney sweep comes up to you. He's like, I know what is that? And he like doesn't know what a TV is. He doesn't know what a video game is. Like he's just massively perplexed by the whole thing. And we would have that with whatever is in the future
totally.
if that also exists.
Horror.
I love it.
Pretty
That was
funny.
an excellent DQ.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Shout out to whoever that was.
I'm going to guess that was my husband, but I'm not totally sure. It sounds like a thing my husband would ask. All right. So, should I give a little context for how we got to you being here today, maybe?
Sure.
So, I already knew about this subject. It's called the Toynbee Tiles or the Toynbee Idea Tiles. And just kind of vaguely, I didn't realize how much information there really was about it. And I have been exploring the idea of possibly shooting a documentary. And I had a friend who I hung out with who is a filmmaker who said, you should watch this documentary about the Toynbee Tiles. And I was like, oh, I've heard of those. That's really cool. Same day, like 15 minutes later, I'm on Instagram. Michael Eades is in Philadelphia, or was that New York? That was New York.
Yep.
New York City. Post a picture. You had come across one.
Yeah.
And you knew about him already. You had seen the documentary before, Resurrect Dead, The Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles by John Foy.
Yeah.
And that's where we begin our story.
And it was like, well, we have to talk about this.
yes.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So,
All right.
you want to kick it off
Yeah,
here?
I'm going to kick it off. I wrote like a whole thing.
I love it.
This has taken me down a path that is unbelievable. Like the threads, that whole meme of Charlie Day, like
Yes.
with threads everywhere and he's going nuts. That is this.
That's what's supposed to happen
Yeah.
when you research a subject on Disney.
Yeah, that is this for sure. And I really hope that I can pull it. I spent like multiple hours today writing this insanely long document. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be coherent. And I don't know that it is coherent.
It's better if it's not,
So
honestly.
I love it.
happy to be
I'm
your
sure it's
first
gonna be
guest
awesome.
in a while because
It's gonna be great.
I don't know where this is going to go. But I
Good.
did write this fun little script. So, all right, here we go. Cracking knuckles.
Ooh, I love it.
Imagine you're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or New York, or Baltimore, or Boston, or Chicago, or Cleveland. Just about a major American city along the East Coast. You're crossing the street and you look down to see a strange bit of paint in the crosswalk. It's about the size of a license plate with a red and blue border around a white background with red text that says, Toynbee Idea. In Kubrick's 2001, Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter.
Whoa.
It's strange, but it's also somewhat meaningless. You walk another block and you see another one, slightly larger and obviously handmade. You realize it's not paint, but it's somehow a plaque embedded in the crosswalk, in the road. This one has the same message, Toynbee Idea, in Kubrick's 2001, Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter. But there's also some small accompanying text right below it. You must make and glue tiles. You, as media, USSR. You find it to be quite bizarre, but keep going. 2 blocks away, you see yet another with the same primary message and a new bit of accompanying text. I'm only one man, and when I caught a fatal disease, they gloated over its death. As you traverse the city, you notice these tiles are more common than you've ever noticed. There may be 100 of them throughout the city, each with the same primary message and a different subtext. Now, imagine it's 1987, and you have no way of figuring out exactly what they are, who made them,
Yeah.
and what they mean.
Yeah, you can't like go on like a message board or Reddit thread and find like instantly like a bunch of people that are talking about it. You just like, what do you do
Exactly.
in that time?
That is the Toynbee Tiles.
Yes.
Jeez.
That's the topic for today.
Cool.
Yes.
So they're really beautiful. We will definitely link them in the show notes.
Yes.
They're so cool looking.
Yes.
And they all say, roughly all of them say, Toynbee Idea in Kubrick's 2001, Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter.
Jesus.
What does that mean to you just hearing it initially?
Somebody watched 2001 and that is their interpretation of what Kubrick was trying to get across to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Right.
probably what I would have
so
about.
like lots
sure.
of all his
This is what these look like, by the
you'd say
way.
like all his movies have some sort of like hidden message or
Right.
direction.
Yeah.
Is it 2001 or The Shining that's his apology for the moon landing?
That is too.
I think it
No,
is
that's
it,
The Shining.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, isn't 2001 while he's shooting the moon landing?
Yes,
Right.
that's why
Yes.
it's like it's this, yeah. That's why I got the
Right.
mixed up. But there's the Shining is his like confession of doing the
Yeah.
moon landing, right? So I guess like in that regard, it's
Right.
that's what he's. What is it? What about Jupiter?
Resurrect Dead
Resurrect Dead
on
Jupiter.
planet Jupiter.
Okay.
Yep. So I came across this whole. I don't really remember specifically how I came across learning about this, but I know looking back through my email, I can find 2012. I'm talking to my now wife, saying, "Hey, we should watch this movie.
Nice.
It's pretty neat." So we
I
watched
like that
it.
you were emailing. I think
Yeah.
that's fun.
Hey, we met on an online dating site, so
Oh,
that's how you do it. So 2012, I saw this. It was the movie Resurrect Dead, the mystery of the Toynbee Tiles, was released in 2011, and I saw it in 2012, so around roughly the same time. And I don't remember why I watched it before that. Maybe my wife introduced it. Maybe I brought it to her. I don't really recall. But it's an incredibly good movie. It's like, it feels very 90s when you watch it, like the way
Yeah.
it looks, the aesthetic of it. And I think that's just like sort of the technology of the time.
It's very low budge.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not like a major thing, I certainly didn't know about this at all.
Yeah.
Before y'all brought it to my attention.
It's 90 minutes. It's such a good length of movie.
But packed full of info. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of documentaries, 90 minutes, it could have been 45,
Right.
Not like that at
Right.
all.
Yeah, and it's a lot of talking heads. It's not too flashy or anything, but you are like riveted throughout the movie as they sort of unravel this mystery. Of,
Yeah.
like figuring out like, what are these tiles and who made them? That's
Yes.
like their primary goal, is to figure out who made them. They don't really get into that much like what does it mean. They kind of mostly just focus on who made them. So I want to shout out John Foy. He has directed one movie.
Yes.
This movie.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
He's directed one movie. He submitted it to Sundance on the last day that you could submit movies
Wow.
to Sundance. And this is at a time where I think he had to like burn a DVD and overnight it to them. Was accepted, which I'm sure was a great honor.
Wow.
And then won Best Director in the documentary category
Wow.
Wow, sick.
for
That's
his one and
beautiful.
only movie.
Yeah. That's incredible.
It's amazing. And you can kind of tell, like when you watch it, you're like, oh, he told a really hard to tell story
Yeah.
in a very coherent way. Myself, especially after having researched this as
Fully
deep as I
agree.
went, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how did he
Yeah.
make it so fun to watch these characters figure this out?
Yeah.
So linked in the show notes, I'm sure will be a way to watch this.
Totally.
I think it's on YouTube for free.
It's
but,
on YouTube for free. Yeah.
but if you want to throw some dollars at Voodoo or whatever those
Yeah, it's on
places
Fandango,
are.
I think, for $3.99 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something interesting I do want to also mention. I pulled up a picture of this one. This is the one I love. They call it the Manifesto tile.
Yes.
Oh, man.
So this is one of the tiles that was really intriguing to these people. And it basically follows the story of these three main investigators who all sort of separately were interested. And then when they started to finally get on the internet, as the internet became more
Yeah.
popular and easily accessible, they all found each other and kind of
Yeah.
combined forces, I guess.
Yeah. One of the main investigator guys is this guy named Justin Deere. He's like an artist in Philadelphia at the time. John Foy is the director, but Justin is sort of the main guy. And he has been documenting the tiles since the mid 90s. Like the director and him don't get together till the mid 2000s. So he already has 10 years of photos, including that manifesto tile. And like, he kind of knows a lot about the tiles, but also knows nothing about the tiles.
It's also important to say that this work they did to preserve, or I should say to like archive the information by photographing it, was probably more important than they even realized, because so many of these got repaved over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'll get into it, but there may be a couple copycats have popped up in Nashville over the years.
It's true. It's true.
Seems likely. It seems like once this gained like traction at all, you'd have a bunch of people, especially if it's like relatively easy to replicate, and they all say similar things. Like,
Yeah. It's definitely worth talking about later, just like how like what this thing is and what it means beyond the literal thing.
Yes.
You know what? Like this immediately, and this might be like crazy to like make this, but this really, the way that they are and the way that they're all phrased and kind of like fractured, extremely reminds me of like QAnon drops.
Yeah.
And do you like? So
For
now,
sure.
now I'm just like wondering, do you think that that was like potentially where they're pulling from? You know, when they're writing those.
No, I think
The Q, I'm talking about Q, like the.
I don't know enough
behind
about
QAnon, you know
I
what
don't know
mean?
enough about Q to say.
Yeah.
Like Q, like indisputably, this is my opinion on QAnon in general, is that it's like a farce made up by a
Yeah, oh,
guy
for
and
sure.
his dad. Fully.
Did you watch
Like,
that documentary?
Undisputed, yes.
Yes, definitely.
It is that. But do you think that maybe that's what they're pulling from?
Maybe.
I think it's I think
very
like it
possible.
just really reminds me, like viewing, like seeing them written and how they are, where they're like so cryptic and.
It is very anti-media too, which is
It is
interesting because
extremely
QAnon
anti-
is.
yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
I wonder
Huh.
if they're.
Well,
Anyways, that's just straight thought.
let's just throw it out to the QAnons out there that are tuned in. Let us know.
Please no. Please stop listening now. I don't. We don't need those listeners.
So I don't want to spoil the movie because I really do think everyone should watch the movie. But the basic plot of it is they have all these tiles and all these pictures of these tiles, and there are some in South America. Like somehow these tiles have made it to South America.
Yeah.
And one of the tiles in South America has an address on it that's in Philadelphia,
Nice.
which is bizarre. That
Yeah.
means that someone went to South America, had this tile with an address in America, and then put it in the road,
Yes.
Mhm.
which is crazy.
And then also trusted that someone was going to find that, and somehow,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe they weren't trusting that, but like, what possessed you to put your address? I have so many questions.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Well, I think I can answer that question, though. I know why they shared the address because
Ooh.
the point of it, the point of the entire endeavor, spoiler alert, is to spread this idea.
Okay.
Like the idea that's in the Toynbee tile is like, this is important information that needs to get out to the world. Everyone needs to know about this. He's saying, no one is listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I'm going to spread the word. I'm going to put my manifesto in the street. Everyone sees the street. I'm going to put this message in the street where you see it, where you're walking every day. And that's, I presume, why it is in South America as well. Like, here's my address. Get in touch, and I'll send you more information about this.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So that South American tile has the address, which the filmmakers then, pull that thread, and they're like, oh, we find out the guy who lives at this house. We talk to the neighbors and kind of figure out that there's maybe 2 or 3 possible people that this could be. Let's narrow it down. The movie is largely about them doing that practice of narrowing it down and figuring out who might it be, who might it not be.
And the investigation they do is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, considering it's such a low budget, do-it-yourself effort, they, really, I feel like did a great job investigating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So they have that tile in South America to go off of with the address. They also know about a short play published in 1983 by David Mamet called 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And the play is about a radio call-in show where the person that calls in is talking about how Arnold Toynbee has an idea that is depicted in 2001: A Space Odyssey to resurrect the dead on planet Jupiter. So there's David Mamet play is exactly
Yeah.
the idea of the Toynbee tile.
Yeah.
When did that come out?
83.
Okay.
And so a lot of people over the years, I think, have asked him, where did you get this idea? Obviously, you heard this somewhere.
And
Yeah.
David Mamet says, I came up with it.
He says it was not based on a real phone call, but it was based on him listening to Larry King show. Right? Larry
Yeah,
King
he's like,
show.
this play is a tribute to Larry King and his
Okay.
late night call-in show, but I made the call up. The whole thing's just made up.
Or so he thinks.
I'm pointing at you knowingly.
Right?
Yes. And then the last clue they have, I think this is the third clue in there, but it's, I think, like the manifesto tile. Just like all those weird details in there. There's 3 threads that they kind of follow.
Yeah, there's like 3 main. Oh, no. The third one is there is an article that a person wrote.
Oh, the Philadelphia Inquirer
Yes.
thing. Okay.
And it is just this one random article where obviously some person who had this message contacted this reporter and gave them this kind of crazy spiel. And they wrote this little column that's kind of like, does this sound as crazy to you as it does to me?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a little lighthearted. Dismissive. It gets the information a little wrong. They tried to contact the guy who wrote it, and he sort of like misremembered who he spoke to. But he did kind of describe this person that he had talked to on the phone, right?
Right.
And sort of explained what type of person he was.
Yes, exactly. That guy's name was Tom Marasco, who was mentioned in the Philadelphia Inquirer article in the early 80s as well. And the article is like pretty, I don't know, I think it's pretty dismissive and kind of making fun of this person.
Totally.
Like this guy got in touch with a journalist and was like, hey, I think there's a quote from him that says like, well, I don't have the exact quote, but he's talking about the idea of colonizing Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, yeah, that sounds crazy. But he mentions in it that this guy that contacted him has a group called the Minority Association. And you can write to the Minority Association and they'll send you more details. Contact Tom Marasco in the Minority Association to get more info. So these are the threads that are being pulled on in the movie. It's all very interesting. I don't know how far forward we want to jump because I don't want to spoil all of the movie and all of the jumps that they get through, but they pretty much figure out who the guy is.
Yeah.
That's what I think that we should. I think that we should go for it because
it's very spoiled.
Because I want to know and I want you to tell me right now.
Yes. So they go through a lot of different hoops, which you should definitely watch the movie to see all the different hoops.
Yeah, because you still want to watch it even if you know what's going to happen.
I've watched the movie 2 or 3 times at this point.
It's still entertaining. It's not about like if we spoil it right now. You're still going to, you want to watch all of the things they have to say about it.
Yes.
For sure.
So the person that lives at the address at the tile in South America, his name is Sevi Verna. Severino is his full name, but everyone calls him Sevi. Last name is Verna. He's also known as the Birdman.
Mm-hmm.
Like from Hey Arnold?
Similar vibe.
Really?
Mm-hmm, totally.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like kind of like a recluse old guy who's just like likes his birds, doesn't really want to talk to people.
I'm glad you understood that reference because I am too old to know Hey Arnold.
The Pigeon Man.
Yeah, like similar idea. Like kind of this...
it's not like interacting with people. The pigeons understand him. He relates to them.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
It turns out his parents, I've learned, I don't think I told you this, ran a funeral home.
Whoa.
Which is pretty wild to be talking about
resurrecting the dead.
And being like obsessed with death because your parents ran.
This is so real.
Yeah.
Whatever he's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet because I'm still learning from what you're telling me. Whatever he's talking about is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I was a little concerned about bringing this to the table because this isn't like paranormal. Like they say in the movie, what's really interesting in the movie,
high strangeness.
Yes. I think it's fully high strangeness.
The main guy, Justin Deere in the movie, has this great quote where he's like, "Someone is making these tiles.
Yeah, a real
human
person
is making these tiles. This is real.
Yes,
they're somewhere in the world.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
probably in Philly.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, I've looked. There's an old map. We can put this in the show notes too.
Cool.
There's an old map from probably a decade ago that was trying to map out where all of them were that have been cited. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many of them are copycats. I don't know how many are legit, but there were so many in Philly, so many in New York, and it just like spread everywhere.
Yep.
So we come to find out Sevi is the person responsible for this, but Sevi is totally a recluse, like has bolts on his door, has like plywood in his windows, does not answer the door, just like will not talk to the filmmakers. People in the neighborhood give a couple anecdotes that are really interesting. One is a guy says like he's very much a night owl. He goes out and grocery shops at like 2 or 3 in the morning. He has this old car that he drives around at night. One time he was playing music really loud, like he plays an accordion, and the neighbors got really irked at him for being loud, and someone broke into his house and like held a knife to his throat and threatened him to be quiet. Just horrible.
You gotta leave Sevi alone.
We gotta leave Sevi alone. But that, I mean, if you read the manifesto tile, part of it says the media is ignoring me and has hired the mafia to squash
To
my
get him,
message,
yeah.
to kill me. And here's a neighbor breaking in and holding a knife
Yeah.
to his throat. So that's like exacerbating his paranoia, which is wild. The other mystery that is really interesting that comes from anecdotes of the neighbors is like no one really understands how these tiles are getting where they're getting. Like, how are they in the streets?
Well, and to back up just a bit, so the main character, Justin Durr, says one night, after years of obsessing about these tiles since he was a kid living in a squat out in Philly, he's like a very punk tattoo guy. He says one night, 4 a.m, he walks to a gas station. He goes in, he comes out, and he sees a tile in the crosswalk that he swears
that was not there
could
before.
not have been there.
Like happened in that
He
moment.
starts running around yelling, Toynbee Idea, trying to
Oh my
find the
God,
person because he's
dude.
convinced he missed them by like a millimeter. And it's like, again, how could he have missed someone installing a thing in a crosswalk?
and
Like how, right? How?
And they're like in there.
They're in there. And he
They're in
gets
there.
and he describes it, which is really cool. He says it's covered in tar paper, which I'm not super familiar with, but I get an idea of it. And there's a bunch of like actual tar all around the edges. So it looks like just a weird piece of paper on the ground. And he peels back the paper and he can see, oh, it's a fresh tile covered in tar and tar paper.
Yeah.
And he realizes, oh, he's putting this on the ground. And then the sun is kind of like setting
it, yeah.
the tar,
Okay.
and cars are driving over it and pushing it into the cement.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and
okay.
it's
I
just
missed
also
that.
like you devote yourself to like one thing for about 40 years now. You're
Wow.
going to perfect doing
Yeah.
it. Like,
It's so
And at the
fascinating.
time that this is happening, that's got to be, I mean, even if this is the earliest like incarnation with Justin interacting with this, it would be mid-90s. And he started
so he's
this
been
in
doing
the
it for
early
10
80s.
years already.
Yep.
Yeah, so he'd been doing 10, 15
He's
years already.
he probably. I think that if I was trying to figure out something like this, I'm dumb. It'd probably take me 5 years.
I've wanted to
and I'd
make
be
one
able to-
after learning about this. I don't think I could make one.
You know?
Like, it seems so hard.
Yeah, but one
That's
person says,
awesome.
"Oh, you just do
Right.
You write to the guy, and he writes you back."
he makes you one.
Well,
sends
And
it in the
he
mail.
goes, here's the secret. You just
Apparently they're made of linoleum, and we know that there's all this tar and tar paper involved, but they're still like really beautiful. Like just the way they look is just
Artists.
so
Savant.
cool. Yeah. So awesome. So Justin sees one. He like can now see how they're getting put in the ground, but it doesn't still really answer. Like he was in this deli for like a second, like a minute. He ordered a sandwich. How did he miss this guy? But someone in the neighborhood, around Sevi's neighborhood, was like, "Well, oh, Sevi, he's always driving late at night. He
Nice
doesn't.
accent, dude.
He doesn't have a floorboard in his car.
A random neighbor just
Whoa!
says this.
So he's driving up to
That's what I'm
intersections.
saying. 20 years
Yeah.
of doing something.
Genius.
Recluse. Don't want to talk to anybody. Here's how I have to get my message out.
I love
I
it.
have figured out
Yeah.
the best way to do it.
So
It is
cool,
I
right?
think I ripped
so
the-
brilliant.
You say he's got an old car, rip the floor out of it. I just stamp my tiles, drive over it a couple times.
Yeah.
You know?
It's crazy, right?
When since then, there's a website that absolutely sure will be linked in the show notes that is called ToynbeeIdea.com that has like a ton of them, a ton of like a gallery of them, and they show that he's like more recently been doing them on interstates and like kind of breaking them up. So
Yeah.
instead of it being one big tile, there'll just be this enormous tile that says Toynbee Idea, and that's a tile, and that comes first, and then you drive over that, and then the next one says Cool
Yeah.
Bricks 2001, and then you drive over that, and the next one says Resurrect
Nice.
Bed, and it's like you're reading it as you're driving down the interstate. So he's doing this shit on
Yeah.
the interstate
yeah.
too.
And that's the thing is they could never figure out how he was doing that.
It's his legacy.
Isn't that awesome?
This is his life's work.
This is like epic. I love it.
Yeah. So they kind of figured out but they never really verify. You know what I mean? Like, because the guy doesn't talk to them, so they don't really know.
Yeah.
Which I think is what adds to the like wonderful mystery of this thing is that like it isn't really solved. It's like 99% solved, but like some of the evidence you have is like anecdotal, like, oh, this woman
Yes.
said the floorboard was missing, but they didn't find the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
right.
in one of the post interviews that I read, they're like, people are asking them, why didn't you follow him at night and see if he drove around and did this? And they're like, because we're not creeps. Like, this guy is clearly weirded out by the world. We're not going to do that.
They did make a point to like blur his address in the tile. Like they wrote him a letter saying, we're so sorry. We don't want to bother you. If you don't want to talk to us, we respect that and we will not bother you anymore. Like, I think they really did try to like understand that he's just this dude who does not want to be bugged.
It's interesting though, right? Because they say his name.
Yeah.
Like it's out. I'm saying it on the podcast because they said it on the movie. Like they kind of doxed him a little bit. But also like his whole thing is putting this message out in the world.
Right. And he put that address out in the world. Yeah.
Well, here's kind of where I'm like landing on it at this point. Think about like any like famous like graffiti artist or something.
Right.
Like people like Banksy's like the most famous like guy like that, and people all but know like who he probably actually is.
Right.
But like every other like guy like famous graffiti artist is like non-anonymous and do things exactly like this. The thing that makes it more like in our realm is that it's like mysterious. It's not just like a guy writing like his tag or his name. Like he's like writing a weird thing, but it's the same thing.
Right.
Like it really, really is.
Like the Oprah tag in Nashville?
Yeah. Like or what was it used to be Moist before Oprah. It was like Moist was everywhere.
Yep.
But yeah, like he's not gonna get tied. He doesn't want to get tied to it. So he's not doing any of those things, but you can't prove that he's doing it, even if you put his name out there. Maybe you don't want to put out his address so that he doesn't get like, I don't know, a million weird emails about about the documentary,
right? Or
people following up on that. But he does want it in this way. He wants the infamy.
Yeah,
he wants somebody to have figured out, and that they did. Maybe they shared that with the filmmakers. You know, he's like, I want somebody to figure out the mystery, and you guys did. So I don't know.
So I want to walk you through two more things. I know that I don't know how short on time we are.
We're good.
I should know as
we're
the person.
cruising.
But so I want to walk you through the timeline, what I have put together as the timeline.
Cool.
Because they kind of do this at the end of the movie, and I loved it. I ate it up so much for them to just like, here's the recap.
Yeah.
And they kind of just go through everything that they learned that happened. So I'm going to do that.
I love it.
I'm going to copy that and do that right now.
I love it.
All right. So sometime between 1968 and 1980, our Tiler, we won't call him Sevy, we'll just call him the Tiler.
Cool.
They often refer to him as TTT, the Toynbee Tiler.
Okay.
Sees 2001: A Space Odyssey. So somewhere in there. He came out in 68, Tile started in 80. So somewhere in there, he saw 2001. We know in between January and June of 1979, our Tiler reads philosopher Arnold Toynbee. Was very popular in like the 50s. He's like he like does this huge study on civilization and societies, writes like a 10-volume book about the rise and fall of different societies and what caused them. And he also writes an autobiography. And in that autobiography, he talks a little bit about resurrection. And so between January and June 1979, the Tiler reads some Arnold Toynbee, and it mentions dead molecules being brought back to life. It's not entirely accurate that that's what Toynbee said, but that's what the Tiler gets out of it. And he mentions these specific dates in his later manifesto in the what are they called?
That was actually in a letter from James Marasco that was the handwritten letter that guy got from James Marasco,
so
I think is where it said that.
I mentioned the Minority Association earlier. The filmmakers do get their hands on these documents from the Minority Association. Like, write to me and I'll send you documentation. They do eventually get their hands on it and it's not in the movie, but they have posted the PDF online and you can read all of the stuff that the Minority Association was putting out.
Yeah, all of those docs are on resurrectdead.com.
Yes, another amazing site. So that's how I have this timeline, because it's kind of like spelled out in that document. So July 1979, the Tiler discovers that Toynbee is saying that cavemen who invented the first tool unlocked science. Like when a caveman got a tool and did something with it, he invented, or she, or they, invented science.
Directly from 2001.
Kubrick, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So our Tyler is now like, oh, that's exactly what happens in 2001:
Yeah.
A Space Odyssey. Like the obelisk
That's
unlocks
like the whole thing.
Yeah, unlocks the whole thing. Early 1980s, the Minority Association is formed. Now that Heavy, the Tyler, has this idea, he's like documenting it and like putting together a press release. He's like, we got to tell the world this is like the future. This is like evolving mankind to like push through this. Sometime in 1980, the Tyler calls Larry King live, supposedly multiple times, to talk about this, and I believe makes it on air. But they talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey on the air and how it relates to Arnold Toynbee and his idea of resurrection.
On this phone call, they say all three of those things. They say the planet Jupiter,
Yes.
they talk about resurrecting the dead, and they talk about Kubrick.
Yes.
All of those things happen in that phone call.
In 1980. And Mamet's play is like 83.
Yes.
So, also in the early 80s, flyers are posted around Philadelphia stating the mission of the Minority Association. Write to this P.O. box and I'll send you some stuff. Also tune into this shortwave radio station if you want to learn more about it, because also he does shortwave radio, of course.
Well, I actually loved that part
I
because
do too. It gets even better in like 85.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you get into it. It's so good.
So also in the early 80s, I don't have a specific date, but that Philadelphia Inquirer journalist gets a message from Tom Marasco, heavy quotes, about Toynbee, 2001, Resurrection. And like, it does say in the article, Marasco is quoted as saying like, Jupiter is poisonous. There are no specific scientific principles I've found that can make this possible. But like the possibility of giving that planet an oxygen atmosphere is beyond what science fiction writers can imagine. But he's saying Toynbee and Kubrick saw that it is possible.
Yeah.
But the writer's so dismissive of it. Just like, what a crackpot. Like, kind of makes fun of him a little bit too in the article. Very sad. 83, Mamet publishes 4 a.m. And you're like, dude, you heard it. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what blows my mind about what, like, you didn't forget.
He did. He could have.
You know, like,
look, it's called 4 a.m. because the call in was very late at night. So, it's very possible.
But, like, how crazy does your, like, self-opinion have to be of yourself that you're like, oh, no, I didn't hear this. I just made it up.
Yeah.
I just made this up. It couldn't possibly have actually happened. I guess then there's also, like, not as crazy, like, a record of things.
Right.
At that time.
Right.
So it's not like it would have been a rerun. Like,
Yeah,
it's
like he
possible,
probably
like,
could have gotten away with it.
could have totally like been. I don't know that much about David Mamet as like a person. I know his
Neither do
works, but like mid 80s, like drug-addled, late night hangover in a hotel, watching the TV, 4 a.m. and you see a guy call in and talk about all of these things that we're talking about. I guess that it's possible that the next day you wake up and you go, I got a brilliant idea, a dream.
Right.
I
mean, it's like a radio show too. So like you just leave the radio on, fall asleep. You wake up at 4 a.m., you hear something, maybe you write it down in your notebook, like you had an idea, fall back asleep. You've had a coke-addled night. You've been out.
That's what I meant to, that's what I really meant to say. We're talking about the 80s.
So yeah, it's very possible. It kind of seems like he just forgot.
But
it's a lot of.
But it does like make sense when you're connecting all the dots, like you're talking about. Like, oh, that's why this thing exists, is because of this real thing that we know did happen.
But it also adds to the mystery of the tiles, because you're like, well, did he forget? Like we're just making a presumption here that Mamet is lying. Like we're saying, oh, Mamet, you just don't remember. It's really this. Like, but who do you believe? I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Parallel thought too is a thing.
Yes.
Like,
Totally.
like just because the person or Sev or whatever is having these thoughts and acting in this way about what he's thinking and projecting that in his art of doing the tiles. Talk about David Mamet having the same ideas and projecting that in his art, which was writing this play.
Absolutely. So 1985, residents of the South Philly neighborhood that we come to find out is around where Sevi lives are watching the news at night, and they report that the signal on the TV just like starts going haywire and like getting all fuzzy and weird, and they start hearing a transmission come through the TV about Toynbee Ideas. And the documentary filmmakers figured out that he is driving around in this car with a shortwave radio transmitter and just broadcasting his message to the neighborhood, and it is interrupting the broadcast signal for people's TVs. And it's not just one guy that reports it. Like, the neighborhood is reporting that this is happening.
Yeah, like this sweet man they interview is like, oh yeah, I heard he had a big antenna on his car when we were little kids. Like, he's like just throwing out these things that end up being like confirmations, as close as you'll ever get to a confirmation.
Good way to get your message out accurately and not make a single person mad.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very cool. It's brilliant, actually. So 1987 onwards, the tiles start appearing all over Philadelphia and nearby major cities. It's very unclear how that is happening because the filmmakers talk to his mom, Sevi's mom, and they're like, has your son ever traveled to New York or Baltimore or South America? And she's like, no, he has a lung condition. He doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, that's why the mystery is still not 100% solved. Because, like, well, how did he get to South America?
And there's this whole side note where there's this character, Railroad Joe, who maybe works on a railroad. And
Railroad Joe.
Yeah, it's always Railroad Joe.
All the cities in, like, the U.S. were all along the same Con Railroad that used to exist. And so there was, like, this whole thing about, like, was he riding the rails or somehow?
But there's the Minority Association. It's not just Sevi.
Yeah, there must have been other
there's like
humans involved.
So there's a second shooter.
Yes.
That's a synchronicity. That's the second time that's come up today for me. Weird.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Weird. Okay.
JFK is back in the
zeitgeist.
lexicon right now.
Yeah, for
He's
sure.
back. JFK is back.
So back.
He's back in a big way.
So the tiles start appearing with like this subtext that's like, you must post tiles. Like, this guy is now at the end of his rope. Like, the media ignores him, kind of mocks him. He can't get Larry King's audience to get any traction. He's not getting any pickup from the shortwave radio or from people writing him to like get more information. Like, he's basically being ignored, but he has like an idea of like resurrecting humanity. So he starts putting the tiles in, which how you make that leap of logic is beyond me, but I love it. He's like, you know what? These got to go in the street.
Yeah.
I'll do a 4-line stanza that tells everybody exactly what they need to
That's the most direct. He can't afford a billboard.
Yeah.
He can place them on the ground.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say this in mocking at all. Like, I admire it a lot. It's so cool looking, and just like, I think it's brilliant how he distributed these things.
They're also not like, it's not gonna, you can't paint over it or whatever.
Right.
Like,
It takes more effort to cover over it.
you can make these off premise and just plant them.
He's been putting up flyers, and like, those get torn down, those get rained away. Like, he's been doing shortwave radio, but you have to be tuned in to hear it, or maybe watching the news. Like, all these methods that he's trying to get it out. Like, even Larry King or the paper, you have to read the article, you have to listen to the radio show. But if it's in the street, you're gonna see it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, trial and error, and he's figured this out over a long period of time. The time that we start noticing and there is like a record of them, he's been doing it for like a long time at that point. Like, he's perfected it. He's putting all of his energy into it.
I mean, and it's working. We're proliferating his message right
40
now.
40 years ago. Yeah. 40 years from the beginning.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's amazing. So really the rest of the timeline is like, guy breaks into his house, threatens it with a knife. He starts making more messages with even more cryptic like subtext to them. Every concept of past 500 years don't exist in Christian heaven. They only exist in Christian hell.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, he basically is saying we've gone past when heaven exists and we can't go to heaven anymore, and that's why we have to do this.
Man, that sucks, dude.
Sorry to break that news to you. I'm so sorry.
Bummer.
Yeah. 94, Justin Deere starts documentation. 2005, John Ford and Justin team up and start the Resurrect Dead film. I want to shout out Steve Weinck and Colin Smith. I don't know if I'm saying Steve's last name right, but Steve and Colin are a big part of the movie as well and contribute a great deal.
And the thing is all three of these guys are very normal people. Like, they're just people who really got deeply interested and wanted to facilitate figuring it out.
Like, what's this?
And it's sweet. Like just seeing all three of them and how instead of like, because there was definitely competition between a lot of them. At one point, they finally have a guy who ran the Toynbee Idea website who finally gives over all the emails and they end up getting us information. But I think people were gatekeeping information, which you always do when you want to be the first to, you know, investigate and, you know, whatever, solve the mystery. But it's cool to like watch this like journey of these three guys and they got a lot of things on camera, them going to Sevi's house and knocking on the door. They got a lot of it on camera, which is really cool. Yeah, it's a beautiful journey.
Sick.
Yeah.
2011, the film was released at Sundance, wins the Director's Award. Awesome. 2013 to 2015, tiles are still appearing, but they're kind of degrading in their appearance. The theory is that he's still making them, but in a higher volume. So he's not spending as much time making them. He just wants more of them out there. So they're not looking as cool, but they're like more of them. And then 2015 onward, tiles are still appearing, but tons of copycats have started to come up. Now that word is out and like the movie's released and people are into it. There's one called House of Hades that is like very popular that looks exactly like, I mean, the style is like one-to-one, but maybe a little more like imagery, like adding like weird cryptic images into it as well. But it's super cool looking as well. It's just a copycat. Which I think that is what exists in Nashville. Like downtown Nashville, there's a couple House of Hades tiles.
Other people doing it.
Yes, other people doing it. And that's kind of,
good.
Brings
That's
us up
like,
to where we are.
Doesn't seem like that's not what he wants. Right? Like it's not like...
Right. All right. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the actual message. And like part of my deep dive was like, what does this mean? So, again, just to refamiliarize all of us, Toynbee Idea in Kubrick's 2001, Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. So for me, that's like...
If you have no context, that doesn't mean anything to you. Especially, like, some of them don't even say Kubrick, right?
Yes, right.
Some of them just say
movie.
Toynbee Idea and movie 2001.
Yes.
Right.
Like... This one that I'm looking at that's on the Wikipedia, Toynbee Idea and movie 2001, Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. You see that, especially like, I don't think that any of us are thinking of like being a New Yorker.
Right.
You see that and you think about that probably the same way as you see like somebody losing their mind on the street or in the sub. Like you see crazy stuff all the time.
Right.
And you just go, I don't know what that means at all. I'm going to keep it moving.
Right.
And I'm going to walk past this. Like, for the most part.
I think that's true until you start seeing them like every block. And then you're like, what is this? What does this mean?
But, yeah. Okay.
Like, maybe it would intrigue you.
I think that we would. I think that the average, like, average person living in a major city.
I will confirm with you, every time I've seen them in New York, like, my wife and I will walk over one and be like, and like lose our shit and like stand over them in the middle of traffic taking pictures and everyone's like, walking past me. Like,
what are you doing?
Yeah,
keep it moving.
What is this trash in the street that you care about? Move on. Like, no one cares.
Yeah, those are there. They've been there for 40 years.
Get over it.
Yes.
I love it.
So, who is Toynbee? That's like, you know, kicks it off. Toynbee Idea. So there was some argument online. I think it's very clear from the manifesto, from the social manifesto or whatever it's called. I think it's clear from the Minority Association manifesto that it's definitely referring to Arnold Toynbee. But there was some very interesting debate about what it could be because there was a Ray Bradbury short story. Yeah,
that's what I'm interested in.
Like it's not referring to this, but it's fascinating that Ray Bradbury publishes a short story called The Toynbee Convector that is a story that suggests, quote, humankind must always rush to meet the future and believe in a better world and must always aim far beyond what is practically possible in order to achieve something barely within reach. End quote. Like,
whoa. Yeah.
Like that is the idea of colonizing Jupiter. Like it's beyond science currently.
So cool.
But like that's what we should do.
Whoa.
So that's a Toynbee idea. It's in the Toynbee Convector. That's what we should do.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's not what it's referring to.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wild. There's also like an Arthur C. Clarke piece called Jupiter 5, which features a spaceship named Arnold Toynbee. That's interesting. Arthur C. Clarke co-wrote 2001. Like Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke write 2001 at the same time.
Yeah.
Clarke is writing a book. Kubrick's writing a movie together, and then they publish 2001, the movie, or the book after the movie, but only Clarke's name is on it. But they wrote it together. Look it up on Wikipedia.
Well,
that's crazy.
That's like extremely common Stanley Kubrick thing.
Really?
Is he like, well, all is like literally Clockwork Orange, 2001, The Shining. All of Kubrick's movies are books, like they are.
Yes.
And 2001 just happens to be the one that like he and the author like taught, like the rights were like, it doesn't exist like that anymore in like how movies work, but the rights to the movie were sold at the same time as like I'm writing this book kind of deal, like back in the long time ago.
That's really interesting.
Back in the long time ago is I don't know why I said it like that, but you know what I mean?
Scientific.
So yes, that is true, but it's not like that weird. Like it sounds weird, but it is like that where they just kind of like diverged on like how we're gonna do this same story. And Kubrick's thing is his thing, and the author's is like his own thing, the same way that like The Shining Kubrick is so different than Stephen King Shining.
Right.
He just like was like, oh, this is the book that you're writing. I'm taking the idea and I'm going to make my own movie. I'll credit you.
Right.
But I'm taking your idea and I'm going to turn it into a movie that just so happens to have been slightly before the book was published.
That's interesting.
So we know that the Toynbee referenced is actually Arnold Toynbee, this philosopher guy. And we know that because of this quote from the Minority Association. I have to read this. It's a paragraph, so bear with me.
No problem.
You're going to love this.
We love reading paragraphs on air.
We really do.
Okay. Quote. This is from the Minority Association. It says, you have written in to the Minority Association, like, I am intrigued by what I've seen. Tell me more. Quote. Enclosed is a copy of our press release that we are giving out to all media to publicize Arnold Toynbee's conception of the colonization of outer space, as depicted in 2001, A Space Odyssey, on the ability of science to bring every dead molecule of every dead human body, of every dead human being that has ever lived in history, in order to bring them back to life on the gigantic planet of Jupiter. Signed, Severino Verna. So this was, you were supposed to contact Tom Morosco to get the press release, but in the files, he signs one of the pages with his own name. So that's another way that they've like confirmed that it's the Sevi guy. But it's really like, you can't put that on a tile, that paragraph, but like that's the manifesto, really.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a Toynbee idea that he says you can bring every dead molecule back. That is depicted in 2001, A Space Odyssey, and we're going to do it on Jupiter. Like, that's the tile right there as a paragraph. I find that very interesting. Turns out, the concept of the colonization of outer space is not literally a thing that Toynbee wrote. So I don't know if Sevi just sort of pulled this from it.
Extrapolated.
There is an autobiography that Toynbee writes called Experiences, where he talks a great deal about the separation of soul and body, and how no one's ever met a soul without a body, but you have met a body without a soul.
Cool.
And we know that just through like general science that matter only changes form. Like,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like everything exists all the time. So like, it's this idea that you kind of return back into the great void, you know?
Yeah, transmute back to the base elements.
Right.
And that's where they think he got the dead molecules thing from, was like from those words, right?
Right. So your soul is still in the ether, just as your body is in. Your body literally returns to everything, but who's to say that your soul is not also doing that?
All the souls are on Jupiter.
Possibly.
Is that what he's getting at?
Possibly.
Maybe.
So Toynbee really is talking about, like, you know, Christian theology, talks about this, like Jesus is resurrected, you know, like he also talks about ESP, which is not Christian theology, but he talks about ESP and that he's seen it himself. And so like there's something going on in the brain and with communicating with one another that is possible. We just haven't really tapped into it yet. So like Toynbee is onto some like pretty wild ideas. Like as a philosopher and as a scientist, he's saying ESP is real. I saw it. Like I've seen it with my own eyes. People can communicate beyond them what they've witnessed with their own eyes.
Cool.
And he's saying the soul and the body like return to the great void of like everything, transmutate, as you're saying. So I think taking those ideas together that like, oh, if I'm communicating with a soul that I've never met or a person or an idea, if you can communicate with the dead, then you could resurrect them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what Sevi, that's my extrapolation is that
Let's
Sevi
do
is
it.
pulling
I feel
those things
that.
together.
That's so cool. I love it.
Any like Wyatt's Jupiter?
Well, in 2001, they are headed to Jupiter.
Yeah.
So the obelisk, the third obelisk, I guess, is around Jupiter. And then Dave gets to Jupiter and the obelisk is like, hey, I'm going to put you in this teleportation thing and warp you. And that's like all the cool warping that's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he returns as the space baby. He's like sees his own life and he's sort of resurrected through Jupiter as being like this evolved creature of space baby. And there's a quote from Kubrick that says, about the end, in a timeless state, his life passes from middle age to senescence to death. He is reborn, an enhanced being, a star child, an angel, a Superman, if you like, and returns to Earth prepared for the next leap forward of man's evolutionary destiny. I mean,
Fuck yes.
Sick.
Like,
Sign
if
me
you
up.
think that that's what Toynbee's talking about, like resurrection's possible, and then you think Kubrick is like, oh yeah, I'm down with Toynbee. I'm going to put that in my movie. You just got to go to Jupiter and you're resurrected and you're evolved.
Guys, we got to get this message out to people.
We're doing it right now.
I think reborn and evolutionary are like the key phrases there. I think it's wild. The only thing I can't really figure out is like why you would pick Jupiter of all these places.
That's
Giant.
really like what I'm.
Like it doesn't have a surface.
Yeah.
Like you're making the job harder by choosing Jupiter. It's big. It's really big. And if you're doing all of the bodies that have died ever, you're
gonna need a big planet.
You need a big planet. But it's also the gas giant. Like
Or maybe they're the gas.
Gas planet. So the lightest planet, most surface area for all of the
but
souls to
surface
exist.
area, there's no surface.
Huh.
Exactly. There doesn't need to be a surface.
Interesting.
You're in
The
your
souls
like
are the surface.
yeah, you're in your soul form. Right?
Before you become a space
Completely light.
baby.
What is it, 21 grams?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
You don't like
yeah.
21 grams, for sure.
Love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, that's the literal tale of the Toynbee. I think about outsider art whenever I think about this.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just like,
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to bring up
Yeah.
with the graffiti thing is that like this is like you can view this as like how deep we've dove into it all throughout all of the like existential larger themes at play. But like just imagine being like or just not imagine, but like think about it as being like this is my art.
Yeah.
It's art that like we've repeatedly referred to how beautiful they all are,
Yeah.
how nicely they're made, how well they are put into the surroundings
Yeah.
that they're in. Like it's viewing it exactly like you said, outsider art. It's not traditional. It's not a painting in a museum, but it is a beautiful thing that is placed in various cities and various places around, and that has influenced other people to then create similar things.
it has an infectious
And
message.
so if it's like, if you are this person that is in this documentary, that is probably the person that's doing it, and you are a recluse and you are very inside of your own world, and this is what you have obsessed over and what you have wanted to put into the world as your mark, and then you have done it at this scale.
Yeah.
Like imagine how, like just doing that successfully like this. Like how much time and effort has been put into perfecting this.
It's wild.
Whether or not it and it can be not literal. right? Like the message can be like grand and not like we have to do this. It's just like the thought.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So is this like the most successful not like what's
Like grassroots campaign?
yeah, or outsider artist, or like what do the people call like
You could call it a meme for lack of a
Like
better
a
word.
you could,
viral marketing?
or like not graffiti, but like street art is really what I'm
Totally.
the term I'm searching for.
Yes.
Yeah, this is like in that world, street art. It's just on the ground.
Yeah.
It's like it's like being in the ground is like so. Who else is doing that?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to view this person as like an artist, first and foremost, I think that's like groundbreaking and insane.
Yeah. I love the idea that the message, just like what you said, that like it doesn't have to be taken literally, even though he might want it to be.
Sure.
But it, art is in the eye of the beholder. So like it can mean whatever it means to you once you view it. And it is this like infectious thing. Like I have thought about this stuff since 2012.
Yeah.
I like love it and think about like, man, even if I spent 6 hours researching all this stuff and learning about it, and now I know all this additional stuff about Arnold Toynbee. Like it sent me down all these wild threads, like he did that.
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
No, you're saying it.
Is
I'm
that
agreeing.
like yes, yeah. Is I think that it would be pretty easy and like shallow to dismiss this as like this is like a schizophrenic person that is like obsessed on one thing, and I don't buy that. Like I think that exactly what you are saying, in that like putting like it's like almost expertly crafted to become like, let's expand on this to the point where like what we are, like you said, what we are doing is the exact point of it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's great.
Well,
The subtext throws me off from that point. Like,
Sure.
Him saying he's only one man and the media and the mafia is after him, and like how frustrated a lot of those subtexts feel. But the main message, it hits home.
yeah. Yeah.
Hope he's doing good.
I know.
I hope he's out there doing great. Yeah.
You said you thought he might have moved to Atlantic City?
I think he lives in Atlantic City now.
Okay.
But, I think the documentary people are like pretty cagey about sharing, rightfully, cagey about sharing any information about him. Because they're like, just leave him alone. Like, he did this thing. We all love this thing. Don't harass him. And the internet's obsessed with harassing people. They want to get in touch. They want to have like a personal piece of it. It's like, just let the guy do his thing.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
That's it. I present to you the
Wow.
Toynbee Tiles.
That was
Thanks,
amazing.
Michael. That was
That
really
was like
cool.
the most fun I've had talking about a thing on here in a long time.
Yeah, very
That was great.
thrilling. Very thrilling. Again, highly recommend go check out the documentary Resurrect Dead, The Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles by John Foy. It's on YouTube and Fandango.
ResurrectDead.com.
Yes.
ToynbeeIdea.com, right? Is that what
Yep.
it's- Yes, ToynbeeIdea.com.
Yeah, so the last thing I saw was a Reddit post from 6 years ago from here in Nashville at the Nashville subreddit saying, I'm visiting soon and I have a bit of a specific request. Does anyone know if there's any Toynbee or House of Hades tiles still in the streets? I found a few old posts that reference one at 6th and Union, can't tell if it's still there from Google Street View, and one at Broadway and 4th that existed as of February 27th, 2017 per Street View. But I was curious if there are any more around. I would love to snap a couple photos of them in the few weeks. So a couple people chimed in. This again, 6 years ago, someone said 6th and Union is still there. We gotta go find this thing. Somebody else said there's one by the walking bridge, I believe. Did you say that?
I have said that. I've literally never thought to use Google Street View to look at these, but it's totally there.
We have to go.
It's
We have
6th
to
and
go.
Union. It is, I don't know if it's still there, but you can go to 6th and Union, Nashville, and I'm looking at.
I'm literally going there right as soon as I leave the
Let me
studio.
see.
I swear to God. That is so cool.
It's definitely a House of Hades, but there it is.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Wow. I want one.
Google.
You want one?
Yeah. like in front
You
of my
gonna
house or
dig it
something.
out?
I don't know.
Oh,
No.
Get out there and just tear
I want
one
to put
up.
one in my
Just
house.
make one.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Make a stained glass
I love
one.
it. Ooh, that's a fun idea.
Nice double ooh right there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Well, I think that is enough for today. What do y'all think?
That was great.
I don't know what else we could possibly even
I'm just
cover that
like,
could be that cool.
All I'm thinking about is how this like sort of like tangentially parlays into the Georgia Guidestones that I want to talk about next week.
yeah.
Like
Okay, cool.
it's like a little like there's like enough of like a enough of a thing.
There's
Yeah,
so
totally.
many little threads to follow like
Yeah.
that. Like I was like, outsider art. And I started looking up like Watts Tower, Howard Finster, Coral Castle, Magic Gardens. Like
yes.
the list is just like boom, 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 boom. All these like outsider artists
Yeah.
that like don't have a plan that are getting this
They've
message
been
out.
touched.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really incredible
They got the vision.
So cool.
for sure.
I love
Yeah.
it. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Michael,
Thanks
for
for
all that
having me.
amazing in-depth research. Epic
Sick.
research. You've been listening to Dizzy Spell here on the We Own This Town podcast network. We are recorded live here at the We Own This Town studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Special thanks to Jay Childers for the sound bed music you hear throughout our episodes. And thanks to our producer, Michael Eades.
Hey.
Our podcast network, We Own This Town, for hosting us. Thank you to Mac Burrus for our editing and for our intro clip. And thank you to Victoria Ocampo for our logo and design.
Brr, brr, brr.
Hey, you can follow us on social media if you want on Instagram at Dizzy Spell World. And you can also find us on all the streaming networks. Please leave us a review. We like magic beans. 5 magic beans, please.
5 magic beans or don't bother.
Or just DM us and tell us why you hate us to our
Yeah.
faces.
I'll just start putting my phone number out there if you have any beef.
I dare you.
I'm all about
put it in a
beef
tile.
right now.
If you have
dude.
less than 5 beans, take your 4 beans and put them in a tile and then tell us where to
Hide
go
them
see it.
somewhere.
Love
give
it.
us the GPS coordinates.
Yeah.
And we'll go find it, dig it up, smash it into oblivion. It's a lot of extra steps. But
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, yay.
Yay.